Welcome, everybody, to yet another Blue Jay Center podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. I'm James Price, along with my buddy Rob. And look, back-to-back series W's, buddy, albeit against a couple tomato cans, but a big series coming ahead for the Blue Jays. We got a ton of stuff to talk about. We'll talk about Romano and Manoah updates. We'll talk about some comments that Ross Atkins had on a radio show about Bo and Vlad. And what kind of, do you read anything into Ross Atkins? We'll get into all of that stuff right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
All right, Berto. My goodness, buddy. We talked about it ad nauseum the last couple weeks or so, that you haven't won a series against a non-White Sox opponent since mid-April, and that streak is over as they win 2-3 against the Pirates with their 5-4 win today. Rob, what do you take, if anything, bud, from this?
We talked. We're negative all the time, Pricey. We can be happy. Like you mentioned, the 5-1 week. That's very good, regardless of who you played. And let's be honest, the Pirates, as we all know, they're not exactly the 27 Yankees. They're no world beater, but they're not a terrible team. They have some nice things going for them. You look at that lineup; it's got some pulse. You see, obviously Andrew McCutcheon's had a bit of a resurgence. Guys like Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz was a freak and fun to watch. Guys like Brian Hayes, and even our old guy Artie Telez gave us some trouble today in that rubber match game today. So not a great team, but still, you got a big series win against a beatable team. You won a series, and overall 8-5. Not what we wanted. We wanted a 9-4 to get to 500, but still, I would say not abominable. You still have a pulse now. So we head into the series with the Orioles. 4 coming to town. That could change on a heartbeat. But so far, you have an excuse to feel okay. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I think okay is probably the right word to use. There's still 2 games under 500. Even after play today, there's still 4.5 games. The wild card. They got to jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. And I've, as much as I just looked at it there, I don't like looking at standings until you're at least 500 or a couple games above.
Right.
Because you're not going to make the playoffs under 500. It's just not going to happen. So I take yes. And baseball is a lot of what have you done for me lately, right? That's kind of what that's really any sports fan is like what have you done for me recently, right? That's why Jays fans back in 2020, two, when Kirky had the great first half, goes to the All-Star game. This guy's the greatest catcher in the world. How can you trade this guy? Now everyone wants him gone because he hasn't done anything for you lately.
Yep.
They were, like you mentioned, 5-1 in the week. Regardless of who you're playing, the 5-1 is great. A very emotional win on Friday night.
Yes. Can we touch on that first? I think that game was insane. That game was insane.
That's where I thought we'd start, just because we've talked about it before. It's a rock fight and a half. That was like hey, you want to be worse? No, we'll be worse than you. And David Schneider's like, okay, guys, enough of that. Let's just end this damn thing. And he hits a 2-run shot in the 14th inning. Yeah, ghost runner. Never thought that thing. My God, what was it was the longest game since 2019. For the
in baseball,
for the Blue Jays.
For the Blue Jays, right?
Yeah, I think September 2019 was their last game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
and I believe that might have been that Anthony Alford game when he hit the walk-off home run with nobody there. Right? I believe that was that game.
Yeah.
But David Schneider hits the walk-off. People forgot how to hit all game. It was ugly, Rob. What'd you think by that?
Even the one run the Blue Jays scored in, I guess it's regulation, the first 9 innings, but prior to extra innings, was a ball that the center fielder for the Pirates just lost in the light, the one that Daniel Vogelbach hit. And it just feels like the Blue Jays, who, by the way, no matter how all the positives we can talk about, one thing that just seemingly will never be positive is that this team just cannot buy clutch hits. They can't get hits and runners in scoring position. And that was very much prevalent on Friday. The only reason why that game really went to 14 innings is neither team could get a clutch hit. But regardless, it seems that the Blue Jays, their chances of scoring a run, it's got to come with the other team shooting themselves in the foot. And that was exactly what we saw with Ji-Hwan Bae, the center fielder for the Pirates, losing the ball, and obviously George Springer scoring Reminded me of that the Tapia grand slam at Fenway where the center fielder just throwing his hands up. Where the hell did that one go?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously at this point in time, if you're the Blue Jays, you'll happily take anything. And fortunately, took advantage. They won a huge game, and nice to see David Schneider walk it off in the City Connects too. So hey, 1-0 in the City Connects. Maybe you should wear them all every game.
I mean, hey, again, we talked about it on Thursday there that it just they looked better than we kind of thought they would. And hey, 1-0, like you said, maybe wear them a little bit more often. You mentioned shoot themselves in the foot. I mean, God, that's what the Pirates did today. Trying to get a pick off at first base. Rowdy Phillips can't handle it. Varsho ends up at third. How'd they score the first run of the ball game? A guy can't block a ball. It gets behind him. You score a run on a wild pitch. Like, these are moments that teams like the Orioles, the Yankees, these good teams in baseball will not do that. So that's why you look awful. Like, these bad teams make you look a little bit better. So, but yeah, hey, you got to take advantage of those mistakes. And that's the problem with the Jays. Hell, the last 2 years or so, you'll get these golden opportunities and then you'll shoot yourself in the foot, or you pee down your leg, or you shit yourself, whatever phrase you want to use. They'll find a way to do it. Let's move ahead to game.
I think our main takeaway, basically from like all this recapping, is that as much as it was nice that the Blue Jays won, we're going to proceed and tread the water with caution as we head into a more serious stretch of baseball against much, much better competition.
Yeah, you're not even a 500 ball club right now. That's why, like, there's no reason for us to overly believe. Look, a 5-1 week's great. It's definitely positive vibes. But then you look at game 2, where they face a competent pitcher, Mitch Keller, and he makes them look stupid. 6 innings of 1-run ball, 8 punch-outs. Now, it does help that Yusei Kikuchi, and that's where I'm going to go right now. His last 2 starts, Rob, I mean, we were obviously there in Detroit for that game, and then yesterday, he was no good. 5 1/3, 9 hits, 6 runs, 5 were earned, only 4 strikeouts, and he was in a lot of trouble all game long. What'd you take away from that one?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have the same isolated start excuse we had last week in Detroit, where it was just a blip in the road, a bad day. We blamed it on the start time because Yusei Kikuchi, a notorious guy who likes to sleep in a lot, got an 11:30 start. So we chalked that one up. Unfortunately, though, that's now 2 in a row. So at this point, you can no longer ignore it. I think you mentioned it right there. Not only the base runners, but Yusei Kikuchi, his main strength, his value proposition is that he can get at jams with a strikeout. He's got great stuff. He can strike guys out. And 4 strikeouts combined in his last 2 starts, all of them being in the start yesterday. That's got to be very concerning. That's got to get your antennas up a bit on what the hell is going on there exactly. I couldn't really catch most of the game. I was working during the day, so I tried to catch it all in the recap. But I thought, the stuff looked a little bit better than it did Sunday in Detroit, where it was just Meatball City. I mean, we were there on the first base side last Sunday, and it was just uncompetitive. This one, a little bit better, but the win kind of got taken out of their sails in that first inning. A rough first inning. Obviously, the home run by Hayes there capped it off. But man, it's really unfortunate. It gave me Jay Happ flashbacks. If you remember back in 2018 when a whole May and June we were talking about, can Jay Happ just pitch really well to increase his trade value, and he had his worst month of the season right before the trade deadline, and then he goes to the Yankees and shoves the rest of the season. It was just what else could go wrong? I'm really hoping that if that's where we're headed with Yusei Kikuchi, if he's a trade bait candidate, which we talked about last week, he obviously would be a guy that you would trade if you pivot and go in that direction. I really hope that there's nothing materially wrong and it's just a rough stretch that's now extended to 2 starts. But did you see anything? I know you probably watched more of the game than I did yesterday. Did you see anything that worried you more than the overall box score?
I'll be blatantly honest with you. When it was down 5-0, I was like,
right. But
I've kind of seen that. But
to get to 5-0, you have to watch like a bit.
Sure. And Kikuchi's a guy who's built on emotion, right? We know that.
Yeah.
We talked about that in Detroit. That he didn't allow any runs in the first inning, but you and I turned to each other. We're like, they're hitting him hard. And they were finding gloves. You got lucky to have a 0 on the board, and then obviously we know what transpired afterwards. And yesterday he wasn't so lucky at finding gloves early on, went down 3-0 before your bats can even get to the plate. And it's kind of like a domino effect, right? Yeah. Bad first inning. So that does affect him fully. I mean, like it does for Chris Bassett. Watch him today. He had 1 run the first run that he allowed. And he was pissed, slamming his glove down because he knows that every single run is so important to this team. And when you're allowing 3 in the first and you go to the bottom half of the first inning, right? You have runners in the corners, 1 out, a chance to at least get a run on the board to get things going, you get nothing. And it's like, then Kikuchi's got to go back out there. And he seemed to find himself right through a 0 in the second, third, and fourth, look to find himself. But then the offense continues to have nothing. And he feels now he's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then he can't be. Right. And I think mind games do play a factor here. Knowing how bad this offense is, you're down 3-0. Mitch Keller's clearly shoving through 4 innings at that point where it was 3-0. And as he's going along, obviously the stuff's going to diminish a little bit. Guys have seen him 2-3 times now, and he has to try and nibble and be perfect because he can't allow anything else. And then he makes a mistake. And look, he's been no good. I'm not going to just say, oh, it's the offense's issue, not his. No. But it's a domino effect. And he's got to be better. But in the end, it all circles back to the offense being incompetent, really. Losing 8-1 in game 2, it's not good enough there.
And that was a big takeaway from today's game, because I remember I was watching today, and once they fell down 3-1 after that Rowdy Tellez double, and you see Chris Bassett out there just visibly uncomfortable, visibly. I mean, he's a guy who, even when he's pitching well, he just doesn't. He always kind of looks uncomfortable. He's always just doing stuff out there that he looks like he's gonna puke. I've said it before. He looks like he's gonna throw up every time he's on the mound. But today, you could tell that something was physically bothering him, and obviously he exited his last start early with that neck issue.
Yeah.
But and thank God they came back. So this makes this point irrelevant. But you just like see what it's like. Oh, wait a minute. This is what it's like when your starting pitching isn't great every game. Like you have back-to-back games now where you have to overcome starting pitching that's a little questionable. I mean, that's just the reality of baseball. You're going to have bad starts, and the Blue Jays have seen it this year. They're starting a rotation, despite the fact that they are kind of middle in the pack in terms of production. We all agree. We both agree that the sum of their parts are really high. That their rotation is very legit. You look at least now with Manoah on the IL, we'll talk about him, but 4 guys who you feel very confident in every time that you go out there to give you a good start. And you just wonder, like, if they can't give you a great start, like Bassett today, like Kikuchi yesterday, can they have a chance to come back and win that game? And fortunately today they did, but it was just really scary, the idea of this starting rotation having to deal with multiple injuries or underperformance. It's just scary, man. And thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. They got the win today. But yeah, that idea popped in my head when I was watching today's game.
Yeah, and it's like no one's going to be perfect. Like that's the problem. Yep. We've talked about it, how quality starts for the 2024.
They haven't been perfect. They've been
that's the point.
Which is like, yeah, exactly.
That's the point. Is that the 2024 Blue Jays? They're not perfect. Their pitching staff is not going to be perfect. Look at Jimmy Garcia, right? His last, obviously that Detroit outing, you needed him to be, and he wasn't. But he's human. It's going to happen. Even today, pulling his best Jordan Romano impression, up 2 runs with a save, gives up 1, has a base runner, but gets out of it no problem. Getting the save, his 3rd of the season. So good on Jimmy. Did strike out the side though, which Jimmy Garcia-esque. High fastballs.
Also made the last guy, it was made him look silly. I mean, he was swinging a wet noodle out there that last at bat. But anyway, buddy, just side there. Yeah,
just don't even show up. Like it's ugly. And like the guy that came through, Rob. I mean, the guy that came through, who has been talked about literally since day 1 of this season beginning, about everyone wanting him off the roster. Daniel Vogelbach comes through with the 2-run double. And got a question for you, bud. And we've talked about this a little bit. Is he the scariest hitter on this damn team? Like lefty, big fella. I mean, his first 3 hits today were over 100 off the bat.
Yeah.
We all know why he's on the team. Mashes right-handed pitching. We all know the career splits and stuff like that. And everyone when they hear that stuff through the first 2 months of the season. But recently he's been great. And today, yet again, comes through in massive situations. Is he the scariest hitter on the team?
But first of all, first part of the answer, let's just make sure all the casuals who are they're exploding their heads right now. We're gonna make it very clear. We're trolling. He's obviously not the Blue Jays' scariest or best hitter. It's just for comedic effect. But I will be honest though, when he's in that box, he feels scary to a degree. I'll say the degree of scariness, whatever you want to call that, is higher than a lot of guys on this team. I mean, in terms of the guys that can actually do damage, like right now, who do I want with the game on the line? I mean, I take him over Justin Turner. I take him over.
George
I was going to say George Springer, but he actually did come up with the game on the line the other day and came through. So I want to give him a little bit of props there. But yeah, we mentioned how this team just doesn't have enough pop, doesn't have enough extra base hit, doesn't hit the ball hard enough. Daniel Vogelbach does that. And a big reason why there was so much controversy about him being on the roster is because he's just a bad fit. He's just a bad fit on this current roster where you don't have the DH days to allocate him to. And we saw today, you have to move Vladdy to third base to get his bat in the lineup. And obviously he's not a good fit on this roster, but the stats don't lie. He's for his career, an above average major league hitter. And unfortunately, with a lineup that's been as bad as the Blue Jays have, frankly, you just can't afford to have a guy who can give you positive production when it comes to hitting offense, period, on the bench. You have to find a way to get him in the lineup when the Blue Jays have been reeling. And thankfully, kudos to John Schneider for finding a way today. I'm sure moving Vlad to third base is not the most conventional method, but they did that today and it worked out. Vogelbach is back on the lineup and he got the biggest hit of the game for you. You won that game in large part because of that move. So I'll give credit to Schneider and credit to Vogelbach for staying ready and playing well. He is scary. I'll tell you what. He is one of the scarier guys on the team,
which is insane to think about. And you were reading off these names you have more confidence in. Like I hate to say it right now, but I have more confidence in him right now than I do Bo Bichette.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about this yet on the show, but man, what a step back for Bo. That was a rough series.
That was awful. And watching him today, it's eating at him. It is really eating at him. He was 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts today, and you saw him on the bench. They showed it on the broadcast. He had, sitting there, hands in his face, and then takes his the bandana thingy he got going on there. He had that thing off, and he was just like head down, and there's IKF beside him, just like patting him on the back. Like he's having a tough time right now. And there were moments in this game, like yesterday, for example. I mentioned the first and third one out situation in the first inning with Kikuchi on the hill. He was at the plate and then strikes out, and then the next guy gets out and you get nothing, right? And that just can't happen. If he's going to be your 4-hitter, it's crazy. I mean, you got to have faith in the guy, and he's got to come through, and he hasn't been. And like you mentioned, the fact that they said we need to move Vlad to third to get Turner at first, to get him some time in the field, and because we need Daniel Vogelbach in the lineup, like that's where we're at right now. And it's pretty incredible. But for Bo Bichette, I don't know, man. We thought he was coming out of it, but it's right back.
And the problem is, you really don't know what to do because we talked about Springer, and obviously the key to Springer, you move him down. Justin Turner, play him less. Kevin Kiermaier, play him less. Well, all the guys that have struggled immensely this season that you were expecting to contribute. I mean, with Bo Bichette, you can't really do that. I think the upside is clearly there where, and we saw it right prior to this series, how well he'd been playing to close out the month of May, and obviously the track record means something. This is a guy who he has started slow. We have seen plenty of we have seen samples throughout his career of him getting off to a slow start, and obviously the Baseball Reference page at the end of the year, 800 OPS, 120 OPS plus guy. That's been his baseline as a hitter. So you just can't afford a lineup that's struggling this much. It's not as if moving Bo Bichette down in the order and moving someone else up, you pick a name out of a hat, it's going to help. I mean, there's really no one hitting below him other than maybe Daniel Vogelbach right now that you can make a legitimate case to hitting up. I mean, Justin Turner has been awful for a DH hitting 650 OPS. I mean, that's just that's borderline unplayable. George Springer, we mentioned many parts of the season, he's looked borderline unplayable. I mean, the guys who my quote unquote guys, Dalton Varsho and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who have held their own offensively this season on top of being very good fielders. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I mean, you'd rather have Bo Bichette's upside over those guys. We know kind of what those guys are as hitters, and it's, Dalton Varsho is probably a league average bat. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I know, is a below league average bat. So yeah, no, I don't think there's an obvious case. I think you just gotta keep running him out there, whether it's in the 4th spot or, I mean, heck, maybe you move him to 5. I don't know. But yeah, there's no way. There's no path where Bo Bichette doesn't hit top 4 or 5 in this order, I don't think.
No, there definitely isn't. I mean, the one time he didn't this year, right, was down in the 6th hole or something like that. And it seems like that's usually the little wake up call that he's taking. We obviously know what happened back in 2022, was it? Where
he moved to 7th.
Right, went to 7th. Obviously had the Pittsburgh series that was incredible. And it's pretty fitting how this series.
That was a lineup. That was a lineup where you had legitimate hitters hitting. You could have justified him hitting 7th. Yep. I don't think you can justify it on this roster.
No, you don't. You cannot justify it at all. But we've talked about it ad nauseum. We've talked about it week in, week out from the start of the year. If your best players, more in particular Vlad and Bo, are not your best players, this team is not going anywhere. No matter what Daniel Vogelbach does, no matter what great stuff Dalton Varsho is going to give you, an IKF over
Schneider, who's been
great. If Vlad and Bo aren't going to do what they do, this team's not going anywhere. And Vladdy's come back down to earth a little bit after his torrid second half of May. And that can't happen. They both can't go cold at the same time, especially now going into a series against the Orioles. So It's a weird time right now that they won this series with Bo. I think he went hitless the entire series.
And he
Right?
got to hit the series. Then he
It's
got to hit.
crazy. It's nuts. Now we talked earlier about Jimmy Garcia getting the save today and doing his best Romano impression. And the reason he has to do so is Jordan Romano hits the IL with was elbow inflammation.
Yeah.
And so the good news is there's no structural damage for that. It's just kind of a wait and see type deal for Jordan Romano. And I think this is a phantom IL type thing, maybe possibly a little bit as well. But because you have Jimmy Garcia there, you got Chad Green back, so you may have that somewhat possible. I don't know. You don't have much room to work with your bullpen, really. It's already been awful, and you're losing Jordan Romano, who look, he hasn't been great. There's no denying that, but that's really all we got in Jordan Romano. It's been an MRI showed no structural damage. That was a day ago, so we're waiting and seeing how he progresses. Rob, what do you think about Jordan Romano? Is it a little bit of a phantom IL?
I don't think it's a phantom IL. And the reason why is because I don't again, you just don't have enough in that bullpen to justify doing that. I mean, it's all hands on deck. And look to the bullpen. This is an opportunity for me also, before I talk about Romano, to give them their flowers because they were huge in both of the wins in this series. On Friday, after Jose Barrios had a terrific outing, 7 innings, gave up just 1 run, the bullpen was fantastic. It didn't give up an earned run up until the 14th inning. And you saw signs of life from guys you haven't seen signs of life from in a while. Genesis Cabrera and Tim Meza both looked very good in that outing. Specifically, Genesis striking out, I think, 3 of the 4 batters he faced or something like that. Something crazy, but yeah, the emotions. What's that?
3 of the 5.
Yeah, exactly.
And the crazy part about that was that he came into the situation with a guy at third and 1 out and got out of it. And then obviously the next inning, guy at second, nobody out, nothing doing. So that was elite stuff.
Right, and you saw Nate Pearson go multiple innings. Yeah. You saw Nate Pearson go a clean inning today. Zach Pop, who continues to look pretty good. I mean, we even the new guy Ryan Burr, we saw him pitch yesterday. We'll throw him in there, and he didn't factor in either of the 2 wins. But yeah, no, credit to the pen. They've had guys who stepped up outside of the 2 guys who you trust right now, which are Chad Green and obviously Jimmy Garcia, as you alluded to earlier. In terms of Jordan Romano, though, something was coming. The way he was pitching. I refuse to believe that a guy who had been so good for now multiple years now just seemingly lost it. I obviously I had to think that there was some kind of injury involved. In a sense, I'll be honest, part of me feels a little relieved that there was some actual injury to this. There was some actual physical ailment. It wasn't just him going out there and getting shelled like Eric Swanson was before he got sent down. So I will say that hopefully this time around, when he goes to the IL through his rehab, through his however long it takes, that he'll come back healthy. Because we saw that an ineffective Jordan Romano, an unhealthy Jordan Romano, is how ineffective he can be. He had an awful start to the season, totally opposite of what we've seen from the pitcher the last few years. So hopefully he can come back. But on the flip side of the coin is that hopefully this bullpen can find a way to hold it down. Obviously, you mentioned the tough competition, and this bullpen, even with Jordan Romano in it, didn't look all that great. They were near the bottom of baseball in all of the major categories. So how are they going to pick up the slack? Well, let's see. It's Nate Pearson. We talked about, hey, is this the end of the line? Well, no. You're going to get some opportunities and leverage now. Zach Pop, can you make a name for yourself? This new guy, Ryan Burr, I'm sure he'll get his share of looks. Sure. Genesis Cabrera and Tim Meza. We mentioned Cabrera specifically being on the bubble of the roster. Could you possibly DFA him based on how poorly he was performing? You have a chance now to build off a great outing. So next man on, next man up. Really good chance for these other guys to really make a name for themselves in absence of Romano. Hopefully it's not too long, but this bullpen, as shaky as it is, they're going to need some good performances from these guys, no doubt.
Yeah, and you've always been on the side of never pay a reliever, and and these are reasons to why. Is that bullpens are voodoo, man. Yeah. You can never really understand. You never know who's going to take it. And what you put forth there was perfect because you're like, hey, here's a role. What can you do with it? Yeah. And that's where you do get good relievers showing up. Remember last year, Genesis Cabrera, right? He was elite for this team out of the bullpen in big situations, right? And you got him. Was it for cash or was it pick off a waiver wire or something like that?
DFA claim.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Right. And so he comes over here and he's elite. You didn't have to trade any prospects. You didn't have to give this guy multi-year a boatload of money. No. There you go. Here's your spot. Ryan Burr, like you mentioned, could end up being an opportunity. Now a guy like Genesis Cabrera, a guy like Nate Pearson, they're going to be put in these roles because not just because they're pitching better, because they need them. And
Yeah.
so this is where you could see a guy emerge. This is where Jordan Romano emerged from, for God's sakes. He gets
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
That's how they found Jordan Romano, from this situation.
Absolutely. So let's see what happens. But the recent results against the Pirates have been very good. So we'll see what happens there. But as you see down here, we got a Manoah update.
Yeah.
We talked about in the last one that we'd probably be getting the update on the Friday, which I believe was the case. And it's a UCL sprain. So it was a 15-day IL with a sprained right elbow. John Schneider confirmed, saying the 26-year-old has a UCL sprain in his right elbow and will be reevaluated this upcoming week. They talked in the broadcast today, and I think they said Thursday is when they'll be getting the results of the second opinion. So we will see on that. What are your thoughts on hearing, well, really all of that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, beyond my very limited medical knowledge, you hear the word sprain, you hear the word UCL sprain, you hear the word second opinion. It's not good.
No.
Yeah, I know enough from my sports fandom the last decade plus that anytime you hear all that stuff, it's not going to be great. I mean, I don't want to make any declarations because obviously, as I mentioned, I have no medical knowledge, very limited medical knowledge, especially when it comes to sports injuries. Yeah, I have zero. I'll say it. It's gonna be more than 15 days. If I had to guess. Anytime you hear a second opinion, all that stuff, which in the end really sucks because Alek Manoah, I've mentioned, just such a good story for this team. The way he had been kind of putting it together, the last few starts specifically, and the team's gonna miss it. I mean, the team's gonna miss him a ton. All of a sudden now, his slot comes out on Tuesday, I believe. I believe it's going to be a Trevor Richards or Bowden Francis ball game. Trevor Richards opener, Bowden Francis ball game. So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. It could be all right, but ultimately, we saw Bowden Francis. I don't want to make any large declarations off two big league starts, but the way Alek Manoah was pitching, it's hard to imagine you're going to get that level of production. It's hard to bet on it, that's for sure. Right. And at the same time, Trevor Richards being your opener now, you've now removed him from potentially being a leverage guy, which is a guy that one of the few guys that you kind of trusted a bit. He's got the strikeout stuff. He had pitched for you in leverage the last few years. All of a sudden now, for however long Alek Manoah is going to be out for, you're going to kind of need him in more of a bulk role. So that's going to affect the roster, no doubt. But most importantly, though, it's for Alek Manoah. You just feel so awful for the big Puma. We're both big Alek Manoah fans, and it looked like he was really putting together something redeemable there with so far in a small sample at the big leagues. Unfortunately, now I'm not sure when we'll see him pitch. It's going to be a while. It's going to be at least 15 days. I think it's going to be more. It just sucks, man. For the human element, regardless of strategy, the team, for the guy, it's unfortunate.
It's brutal what this guy has gone through over the last probably a year and a half now?
Ever since the Mariners playoff game. It's just been a downward spiral.
Yeah, so we're over a year and a half from that. It's been miserable for the guy.
Yeah.
And to see him finally find his legs again and to do all the offseason work and to lose a bunch of weight. And we talked about it when we saw him at Rogers Center. It's like, he looks different. It's like, good on him for it. And for just the baseball gods to basically give him the finger and be like, yeah, here's this, bud. So kind of sucks. But hopefully it's not the words that we are all thinking in our mind. But second opinions are never fun. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. Now to some interesting comments. We mentioned Bo and Vlad, right? We talked about them earlier about, hey, for this team to go anywhere, they got to be your best players. Ross Atkins was on MLB Network Radio. I think was it yesterday after? No, it was this afternoon or yesterday afternoon. Regardless, it was one of the 2 days. And this was the quote from that radio show, which Ross Atkins going on a radio show is nuts to begin with, let alone give you a quote. It's crazy. This is the quote. It just doesn't make any sense for us. There will be occasional times as you're talking to other executives where they'll ask if you consider, and we just say it's not something that we spent any time on. Now, this is regarding obviously trading Bo and Vlad. We believe in them. We believe in their futures and hope there's a way that they can play here for a long time. So apparently conversations are going on with both players about extensions, which was wild for Ross to give us anything at all, let alone that. I've always been. I mean, look, being a Toronto fan, you always brace yourself for negativity. Um, I love hearing that because just for the fact of, look, you have two guys who want to be here for their entire career, and regardless of what the team around them looks like, we all know the team around them, if they do stay around past next year, is going to be vastly different. What are your thoughts in the comments, Rob? And do you take anything away from Ross Atkins' radio show thing? He doesn't give the Blue Jays media a damn thing, but he'll go on MLB Network Radio and give them literally everything.
I think I honestly, whenever you see people put out these quotes and stuff, you got to think who it benefits. And this situation, you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as a way of Ross Atkins going out there and not trying to devalue his players. We all see the writing on the wall. 29 other GMs see the writing on the wall. Hey, you have a Blue Jays team that's underperformed. You have two very talented young players who aren't signed yet. Could they maybe be on the trading block?
Yep.
And by Ross Atkins putting out these comments, he could be doing one of two things. He could be trying to not devalue his players. He could be giving them the peace of mind saying, hey, we're not looking to trade y'all. We want y'all to go out there and focus and provide the best results for this team right now. Relax. Nothing's happening. Or it could be two things. Or it could be the second thing, which is he's trying to build up a market. He's trying to say that, hey, we're not open for business. If you wanted me to pick up the phone, you better come with a good offer. You better come with an offer that's going to make me talk about this, because right now I'm not interested in talking about this. So I think it's a posturing attempt, whether that's for one reason or another. And I thought of, you want to know what I thought of the second I heard of this? 2021, around this time, when the Minnesota Twins GM gave a quote, I can't remember who produced the quote, saying that we're not interested in trading Jose Barrios. We want to keep him going into his contract year. And lo and behold, I remember, and Professor's not here, so I can say this. He messaged me privately, or I don't know if it was privately or in our group chat, and said, well, Rob, looks like you were wrong on your prediction. And I told him, this is a posturing attempt. And lo and behold, 2 months later, Jose Barrios is a Blue Jay.
There you go.
So all this stuff
we'll see
that GMs put out, it's there for a purpose. Don't take it at face value. You can look at it however you want, but I do feel like he put out these comments for a reason. And whether it's to keep everything fine and dandy and make sure the pressure and the temperature isn't ramped up in that locker room, sure. Or it could be to build up a market. I don't know. But I do feel like it's got to be one of the two. I don't think he's just talking to hear his voice. So we all know when Ross Atkins talks, not a lot of comes out. I was interested though. I feel like for the first time, we actually have a Ross Atkins quote that I take something and I want to think more critically about, rather than his Chat GPT word salads that he throws out there from basically ever since he's gotten here.
Does he feel like he's on the chopping block at that point? Do you think this may be kind of like a last ditch effort for his own job? I think that's kind of
in what way?
Well, just if you can't extend these guys, because I have a really hard time seeing Rogers and Mark Shapiro letting Ross make these deals if he's not going to be around.
Right.
And if he's trying to build a market, it's a bold stance. If he's going to make these moves, then that's where I'm like, okay, well, I get what you're saying, but I just don't know if he's the guy to make the move. If that's the case, why is he trying to build a market? So I'm kind of in all this thing then.
I do feel like, Ross Atkins, he's done this for a long time. He's been a general manager for over a decade, and this I think he's built enough equity in baseball where when the time comes, I'm not going to say if Ross Atkins he's going to get fired very soon. Like, let's be honest, the writing's clearly on the wall one way or another. He's not going to be the Blue Jays general manager in 3 years. I would be shocked if that's the case. I'm not sure he's going to be the Blue Jays manager in 6 months, the general manager in 6 months. So regardless, I think that the fact that he's going about things the right way and he's not going to act desperately and he's going to just do the good procedural GM things to do, which in my opinion, I think this is a good thing. I think regardless of how you look at it, it's a smart business decision on both sides of the coin. So him doing this, I look very positively on. I think it's a good thing to do, put out these comments out there, especially because there's a purpose behind it. So I think that if he does the right thing and doesn't act desperately, when he goes for his next job interview, wherever that is, whatever organization that's for, I think he can hold that up and say, hey, despite the fact that the writing was on the wall and I knew that things weren't looking good for me in my current job, I still was professional about it and I did what was right for the organization.
Well,
I think that's. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm way off. Maybe I'm way off. But I think that I think that looks good on him if he does that.
I think it can't do any harm. It literally can't
Right.
do any harm that the two
Right.
guys that have grown through your organization you want to lock up long term. Absolutely, it looks great. But whether he does, whether he gets canned, and then they trade the guys, it's going to be interesting to see what transpires after this. But I was very, very shocked to hear anything of validity from Ross Atkins, especially something of that
Did you take
magnitude.
anything of it though? Or did you take anything of it, or did you think it was like a lot of nothing, like usual? Because I don't. I didn't think this was a lot
No,
of nothing. I
well,
thought that this was valuable.
no, this was the one time I think in Ross
Yeah.
Atkins' entire tenure that I took from it. Because you don't say that, hey, people have called us and we don't want to deal these guys. We're in contract negotiations. It's like, oh, whoa, okay, this is interesting. Through the entire offseason, we're all like, so nobody's talked to anybody. Vlad goes to arbitration, and that whole crap show happens, and it's like, and now we're talking contracts. So it's like, whether it's mumbo jumbo or not, it's something that I never thought I'd hear Ross say. So there's got to be something to it because he wouldn't just be spewing out garbage. And if he was, he won't have a job till like next week.
I mean, at the very least, he puts out the "we tried" card.
Yeah.
At the very least, he puts out the "we tried" card.
Yeah.
Else, how much they tried. At the very least, him saying that they've had conversations. Yeah, that like you said, it kind of insulates him a little bit.
Absolutely. Now, Rob, you have not told me what your stat genius thing is yet.
No.
However, we're going to go there right now and see what Rob has cooked up for us this evening. What do you got?
So I have a pretty interesting stat genius one today. It's not going to be regarding any player. It's going to be looking at the Blue Jays postseason odds via Fangraphs. Prior to this White Sox and Pirates series, their playoff probabilities were just in the low 20s. I think it was like 21, 22% or something like that, implying a very low probability to make the postseason.
Mhm.
You look at the postseason probability before today's game, they're at 19%. They went down despite going 4-1 before today's game. And the reason why is because Fangraphs predicted, hey, you would do okay against teams like the White Sox or the Pirates, and the Pirates in this case scenario. So basically, my main point is, if the Blue Jays are going to do any damage and get those odds up, they're going to have to get some wins that Fangraphs doesn't think they can. And starting tomorrow, they're going to have a series. You play the Baltimore Orioles, who are an absolute juggernaut, as much as it pains us to say that. They're very much in contention for the American League East. They're absolutely a contender in the American League, a legitimate World Series contender. Although I do think they have some things to clean up, but we'll see. We'll see how the series goes. If you're going to make any damage and get back to that postseason conversation to the point where you actually look like a postseason team, it starts tomorrow. It starts tomorrow with a good series against the Orioles. Yep. Now, obviously, the 4-game series, I think 2-2, it's not asking for a lot. It's not going to be easy. I think that should be a very realistic goal for this team. Obviously, 3-1, winning that series would be massive. I think that would be a drastic switch in your postseason odds, at least to some degree. But I don't think a 2-2 is a lot to ask. If you're a team that's serious about making the postseason, that team comes to your building, you got to find a way to get at least 2.
Yep.
2-2 split, then you beat the A's on the weekend. All of a sudden, you have a 4-3 week. It's not going to be easy, but I think that's a realistic goal for this team. If they want to get anywhere in the postseason, the last thing you want to do is come back after doing your job, quote unquote, against the bad teams, and then lose 3-4 to the Orioles. That would really just put a damper on everything you did this past week if that happens. So, starts tomorrow. You want to get those Fangraphs playoff odds up? Got to beat a good team. You'll have a chance. The Blue Jays will absolutely have a chance this week when the Orioles come here for 4. That was my stat genius segment of this podcast. What did you think of it, Pricey?
I mean, look, it's not shocking. This is why we went into this stretch of 13 games and saying you got to beat the crap out of these guys. That's why we went into that White Sox series after that miserable Tigers series. And like, okay, I understand it's hard to sweep a team, but you need to sweep a team. And after we did the pod on a Thursday on the off day, and we're like, that was probably one of the least excited I've been after a sweep because that team is garbage. And you did your job, sure. And yeah, you won 2 or 3 against Pirates, sure. Well, Fangraphs thought, that's why I can't sit here and get excited about the team yet because Fangraphs tell me the same thing I'm feeling, basically.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Now, you were talking about the Orioles series. let's get to it. I don't want to say it's a full-on make or break series, but it kind of is, bud. It kind of is. You lay an absolute egg, you lose 3 of 4, you're 4 games under 500. And yeah, you got the Oakland A's coming to town. Oh, we could sweep them and be a game. Like, no.
Well, actually, you're going to their town. You're going to Oakland.
Oh, yeah, Oakland's not coming here. We're going, oh, great. Late games. Love it. 9:40 on Friday. Lovely. Lovely.
I've been watching this team. That's going to be fun.
One game, though, then it's 407 and 407, so not terrible. But yeah, big time series against the Orioles this weekend, or this week, starting tomorrow night, 7:07 first pitch. And I never thought I'd think this through, but here we are. There's a lone lefty they start, Cole Irvin. He started today. Means you got all righties. You know what that means? Danny Burgers is in every game, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Scariest hitter on this team is playing probably in every single game this week. Well, maybe not the Oakland game, but through the 4 games against Baltimore, which is nuts. Yeah. But as you mentioned, if you're going to be a serious team, which, look, we're already in the beginning of June, we already know our general feelings on the team. Yeah. But I think you and I are at the state of, okay, decent stretch against bad teams. But now go prove something. Now go prove us that you can do something against a good team. And if you can't, you're exactly who we thought you were. So finding a way to win 3 of 4 is not going to be easy by any means, especially with no Alek Manoah on the Tuesday. And it's probably going to be like he's mentioned, like a Bowden Francis, Trevor Richards, piggyback type of thing. It ain't going to be easy. Let's briefly go through the pitching matchups. The Orioles don't have games 3 and 4 written down right now, but game 1 is Grayson Rodriguez, who's been awesome this season. 5-2, 3.53 ERA, and Kevin Gausman gets the ball for the Blue Jays in game 1 tomorrow night. Game 2, we talked about it, is going to probably be the piggyback, and you're going up against, Corbin Burns, who's sitting there with a 2.35 ERA, one of the best pitchers in the American League. That's going to go swell. And obviously, game 3, Blue Jays-wise, it's got Jose Barrios. So he came off of his last couple starts have been much better. So we'll see how he was good against Detroit.
Yeah, he was good against the Orioles, too. This last time he faced him in Baltimore.
And then the finale is Yusei Kikuchi. So, I mean, look, it's tough. Do you have confidence in the Richards, Bowden Francis mold? Not really. Do you have confidence against Kikuchi not feeling great about his stuff going up against a team that kind of dominates him over his career? Yeah. I think his last start against Baltimore was really good in Baltimore, but other than that, I think they usually tee off on him. And there's 2 of the 4 games, and we're sitting here like, okay, then you have to win the next 2, and you're not feeling pretty confident. So winning 3 of 4 is what you damn well need. You do that, you're 500 going to Oakland, which, hey, they would take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
And then I believe if you win 3 of 4, you end up, at least at this point of the season, having the season series over Baltimore. So it's kind of crazy to even think that way, but that's where we'd be at if you find a way to take 3 of 4.
Not that it would matter because there's not going to be a tiebreaker, but
no.
For bragging rights, I'll take it.
Sure. And I think a split is what, at the very least, you need. And I know I'm saying
you got to at least split. You got to at least split.
And as a team who's 2 games under 500, going up against a team who's 17 games about 500, talking about at the very least getting a split is kind of crazy.
Yeah, a split is going to be very challenging.
It is.
A split's going to be very challenging. Yeah.
I'd be kind of shocked if they even split, Rob. I mean, I bet
I'd be very happy with a split. Let me put it out there. I'd be very happy with a split.
That's why you mentioned before a split and then winning 2 or 3 in Oakland. 4 in 3 weeks. That's kind of what you want. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts going into this 4-gamer? And I don't know.
A couple thoughts, and then a question for you at the end there. Sure. First thought, I hope they win tomorrow because I'm going to the game. And so I hope selfishly for me that they get a win there. Last couple Blue Jays games I've seen just haven't been great. We saw them that last game in Kansas City, not the last game, but it was the second game of that Kansas City series where they lost, the game where Vlad dropped the ball at first base. We were there in Kansas City. And obviously that's where the season started to spiral a bit. We obviously saw that awful Detroit game. We went against the Rays on a Saturday a couple weeks ago where they blew that four-run lead late in the game. So I've seen a couple of really bad Blue Jays games lately. Hopefully they get a win tomorrow against the Orioles. And I'll be sitting in the outfield for the first time since the new configuration. So I actually want to kind of check it out. I haven't seen it yet. I've walked by the outfield, obviously, but I've been to a million Blue Jays games the last couple of years, and I still haven't sat there yet. So I'll check it out. I'll provide my thoughts when I'm back. But more importantly, in terms of the game, yes. I've said all season long, I'm open to changing my mind. I give this analysis here on this podcast. once I get new data, I recalibrate my opinion. Like you and I, we both predicted the Jays would make the playoffs
Yeah.
after a 60-game sample, near 60-game sample. We retracted that. We said, okay, no, based on what we've seen, we no longer feel confident in that prediction. If you win 3 or 4 against Baltimore, that changes things. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, now you feel differently about this team. To beat a team like the Orioles 3 out of 4, that's going to be very impressive. It's going to be very difficult to do. If they get it done, I think we've got to think more highly about this team. It definitely changes at least some things. So yeah, I'm as much as we don't want to get excited now, and we're not getting excited over them going 5-1 against the weaker competition. If you can do it against the Orioles, all of a sudden, yeah, we're going to feel a lot better when we do this podcast on Thursday to recap the series. And my final thought, this one's more of a question, but you did mention 4 righties for Baltimore, which means that you would want a guy like Vogel back in the lineup. Is Vlad your third baseman tomorrow again?
I mean,
I want to ask you that.
did he do anything for you today to show that it's like an awful idea to do so?
Well, no. He had what, 2 plays?
There was some
a
pretty
routine
nice
ground ball, and then he made that nice play. That
Yeah.
it was in the shift where he ranged over and made that nice play, and obviously a strong throw over. It was Yasmani Grandal who was hitting, so not a fast runner, but still the range and the arm that was some stuff there. I don't think Vlad's a third baseman. I think this, at the very least, this is a band-aid, quick fix, break glass case of emergency solution. We only saw him play third base extensively for 1 season, and it wasn't good. All the underlying metrics suggested that this is probably not a good idea. I'm not sure if you're a guy like, if Vlad has kind of figured it out a bit and has played better lately, but still a guy who has had a bit of an uneven season in terms of what we expected. So adding the element of playing a position like third base, I don't love the idea. I think personally, I would say yes. You ride it out until this Vogelbach thing runs out. So I do feel like eventually it's not a long-term solution. But Vlad at third base, I don't see that. Honestly, I see Vlad at third base being more of a how much longer until Justin Turner is completely on the bench for Vogelbach kind of thing.
That's where I was going to go with it, right?
Yeah.
You obviously have Grayson Rodriguez who can really ramp it up there velocity-wise.
Yeah.
So why does Justin Turner play tomorrow, right?
Right.
Why don't you have Vladdy at first and then have Vogelbach DH? Yeah, that would be the most – that's what I see happening tomorrow. Justin Turner not playing or at least having him available off the bench in case.
So you'd have Kevin Biggio play second base then and have IKF at third?
Yeah. Or David Schneider.
Or Ernie Clement, yeah. You can do that.
There's so many different things you can do with all these kind of like really, really mid guys that this team has, and they're scared shitless to lose them through DFA. Anyways.
God forbid. God forbid you lose Kevin Biggio who's going up there with the bases loaded, praying that the guy doesn't throw him a strike. God forbid you lose him.
Oh, nightmare fuel. And Ernie Clement, love the guy, but holy crap. And people say, he doesn't strike out very much. He also swings at everything. But yeah, okay. Love the guy. Great positive dude. Best buddies with David Schneider. Great. But scoreboard, baseball, hello. Got to be on the good on the field.
This is probably not the right time to introduce this topic, being that we're so late into the podcast. But I think Dan kind of touched it up a bit on the broadcast today. I mean, hey, it's a perfect segue to our On the Farm segment, which we'll allude to after. We're doing it on the farm today. On the farm today. So here's our chance to get on the farm. And Spencer Horwitz, we mentioned ad nauseum how great he's been, but he doesn't have a position. Well, all of a sudden now, if you're going to move Vlad to third base to clear up that first base / DH slot, is this kind of the precursor to a Spencer Horwitz move? I know Dan mentioned it. The organization, John Schneider didn't allude anything to it. He just said, no, we just want to get more offense in the lineup. Didn't mention anything about Spencer Horwitz that I'm aware of at least. But I kind of feel like, hey, if you're making all these strings, wouldn't you try to get a guy who's been mashing a AAA in if you're willing to move Vlad to third? Something that I wasn't willing. I didn't think they'd be willing to do, by the way. But now that they are, that kind of changes things for me a bit. How about you?
Yeah, I'm at the point where you need to find a way to get this guy in the lineup.
Yeah,
Spencer Horwitz. Just like I'm looking right now at his last 3 games. Now you can look at his whole season as they're ridiculous. Yeah. This was his last 3 games. Okay, May 31st, he went 2 for 3 with a run, scored 3 RBIs, a double RBI, had an RBI and walked once. You look at his June 1st one. Get this one: 5 for 6, 2 runs scored, 2 doubles, a home run, 6 RBIs, mutant, and then. Was this June 2nd? That's yesterday, isn't it? Today. Excuse me. Today. Excuse me. 1 for 2, run scored, hit a home run, RBI, and walked once. On the season, he is hitting .332 with a .451 OBP and a .951 OPS. His season last year, .337, .450, .945 OPS. These are over full seasons. This is nearing, where are we? Just over 160 games. You know, I mean, he is a mutant with the bat in his hand. You and no, you weren't there for the trip, but I got to see his first career home run in Colorado. You know, just a bomb. And it's a left-handed bat who can make an impact. Not a left-handed bat like Kevin Biggio. And as you mentioned, scared shitless to see a strike on a 3-2 pitch with the bases loaded. It's just, I'm kind of tired of it, man. I'm kind of tired of seeing that bottom lineup being like Ernie Clement, Kevin Biggio, 500 OPS, 600 OPS. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, and just from like my limited experience, like covering the team and covering the Bisons in Buffalo, just watching him at the plate there, he's too good for the International League. Like every time I go up there and see him, I went to a game this year. He got on all 6 times. He hit 6 times, and obviously the offensive environment in the International League at AAA Buffalo is very high. It's nothing like the major leagues. Obviously, we all know. We saw the Blue Jays play parts of a season at Salem Field, and we just realized how offensive explosion that bandbox, that ballpark can be. But yeah, he's a major league hitter. I've said it before on this program. You got to find a way to get him up. And all of a sudden, if you're willing to move Vlad to third base, today might have been just a precursor, just to test it out how it goes. Daniel Vogelbach's great. We love Daniel Vogelbach. You know, we're fans. But if this team's really going to make, you know, a ceiling-raising move, it's got to be Spencer Horwitz. And if there's going to be playing time, which I think there should be, I think that Justin Turner, an OPS in the 640s as your DH, to me, that's unacceptable in a contending season. I don't care that you paid him. He's a great dude. He's had a great career. But at this point, he's not getting it done for you. You got to find a way to get the guy who's mashing in AAA into the lineup every day. So hopefully that happens. I'm not sure when that'll be. But to me, I feel like, yes, I feel like this is a precursor to them creating room for Spencer Horwitz to get some everyday plate appearances.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I want to touch on quickly looking at the standings.
I know
we mentioned 4.5 games back of the wild card, still a ways back. That's the Minnesota Twins, who have been starting to feel it a little bit. They are 7-3 in their last 10 and all that stuff. And we talk about, they have to jump like 5 different teams. Well, the 1, 2, 3, 4 teams in front of them are separated by 1 game.
Yep.
So we talked about going 3 or 4, right, against the Baltimore Orioles, if at all possible. That would put you at 500. You know who's that team that's just outside the wild card?
Boston.
The first team
Boston
is
500.
Boston at 500 at 30-30.
Right.
So, yeah, like where they are now and sitting that one spot out is like, whatever. But if you can find a way to get right there, right on the heels, who knows? But a good week for the Blue Jays. They needed it. A good weekend overall for the Blue Jays, winning 2-3. You won a series against a non-White Sox opponent. Congratulations. And that's going to wrap it up for this pod. For myself, James Price, and Rob, as always. And for AC and Sammy behind the scenes, thanks, guys, for everything. And we'll talk to you guys after the Orioles series. And the vibes could be very different in many different ways. Here we go.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.